You won't believe what I just found. This time, it's not a $1 PC or some free piece of tech. It's a broken PS2 Slim. The inside was packed with dirt, the components were covered in rust, and honestly, it looked like it had just been pulled out of a river. There's no saving it. So in this video, I'm going to build a gaming PC inside this PS2 Slim shell. My first goal is to keep the original design as intact as possible, with minimal cutting or modifications. And second, I'm going to install an operating system that makes this PC feel as close to a real PS2 as possible. Before I start turning this thing into a gaming PC, let's take a closer look at what we're working with. As you can see, it's incredibly thin, only about 3 centimeters thick and roughly 23 centimeters long. And when you place it next to a graphics card, the PS2 Slim suddenly looks very, very small. With dimensions this cramped, finding hardware that actually fits inside isn't going to be easy. But don't worry, I have a plan. Now let's talk about the condition, because this thing has definitely seen better days. The entire shell is covered in scratches, like someone dragged it down a road at some point in its life. Getting inside wasn't difficult either. In fact, whoever owned this before me had already done half the work. Most of the screws were missing, so I only had to remove the last 2 before the entire top cover came off. And oh my god, this is worse than I expected. The inside is packed with dirt, dust, and what looks like years of neglect. Some of the metal parts are so rusty they're practically turning back into the earth. At this point, there's absolutely no chance this PS2 is still alive. Whatever happened to it, it's long gone. So the first step is obvious. We're taking everything apart and starting from scratch. First up is the optical drive assembly. Even though this thing is basically scrap metal at this point, the spindle motor still spins surprisingly smoothly. I genuinely wasn't expecting that. Next is the cooling fan, and somehow it's the same story. Both the DVD drive motor and the fan still spin freely despite being covered in heavy rust. That's honestly kind of impressive. Then we get to the power supply. Oh my god, this thing is a disaster. Almost every metal surface is covered in corrosion. And the motherboard isn't much better. The whole thing looks like the aftermath of an apocalypse. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it because, realistically, none of these parts are worth saving. But if you're curious, this is the PS2's CPU. And yes, it even has a GPU integrated into the same package. Over here is the RAM. It's tiny compared to the memory modules we're used to seeing today. Then again, this entire system only had 32 megabytes of memory. By modern standards, that's basically nothing. At this point, every major component is beyond saving, so I'm not going to worry about them anymore. The good news is that while the internals are completely destroyed, the outer shell is still in surprisingly decent shape. And that's the part I actually need. Before moving on, I'm going to give the entire case a thorough cleaning. Once that's done, it'll finally be time to choose a motherboard and start building. Choosing a motherboard sounded simple at first, but it quickly turned into a nightmare. Even the smallest ITX motherboards I own are still larger than the inside of this PS2 shell. And whenever I found something narrow enough to fit, a new problem appeared: the height. Most boards are simply too tall for a case that's only a few centimeters thick. I spent quite a while searching online, hoping someone had already made a motherboard that would fit inside a PS2 Slim. But no matter where I looked, nothing seemed to work. Every option was either too wide, too tall. Then I remembered something. About 6 months ago, I tested a PC that was disguised as a graphics card. And this is it. The moment I pulled it out, I had a feeling it might actually work. So I grabbed a ruler and started measuring. Length, perfect. Width, perfect. Even the height was almost exactly what I needed. No matter which way I compared it, the dimensions matched the PS2 shell surprisingly well. At that point, the decision was easy. This little PC wasn't pretending to be a graphics card anymore. It was about to become the heart of my PS2 gaming PC. If you want to know more about this little PC, you can check out the video on screen. I covered it in much more detail there, so I won't go through all of it again. For now, let's focus on getting it inside the PS2 shell. Before anything could fit, I had to remove all the plastic standoffs and mounting posts inside the case. Unfortunately, I don't own a cutting tool small enough for a job like this, so let's just say the process wasn't exactly precise. The cuts are a little rough around the edges, but honestly, that isn't a big deal because most of it will be hidden once the PC is installed. After that, I used a soldering iron to melt down the plastic that I couldn't cut away cleanly and smooth out any raised sections. Eventually, everything was cleared out enough for a proper test fit, and that's when I found another problem. One edge of the PC was extending beyond the PS2 shell, so I had to cut away part of the section. Fortunately, it actually works out pretty well because that space can later be used for external ports and cable routing. And then, oh my god, after all that cutting, trimming, and test fitting, it finally happened. The motherboard was sitting perfectly inside the tiny PS2 shell. I was genuinely excited, although there was one small casualty. While doing all of this, I managed to scrape up my hand pretty badly from constantly rubbing against the pliers and tools. Putting the pain aside, I immediately ran into another problem. Just when I thought everything was finally coming together, I realized the cooler was too tall. There was no way I could close the lid. The main issue was the cooler's mounting bracket. It doesn't stick out very much, but inside a case this thin, even a few millimeters can become a major problem. So I came up with a different solution. I moved the cooler mounting bracket to the outside of the shell. Part of the reason was clearance, but there was another advantage too. This motherboard only has a single mounting point inside the case. There are 2 additional screw locations, but they sit outside the original PS2 mounting area. By relocating the bracket, I could also use it to help secure the motherboard more firmly inside the shell. And surprisingly, it worked. Once everything was tightened down, the system felt much more solid than I expected. I could shake it around without worrying about the motherboard moving. But there was still one problem. The cooler was still too tall. This time, the obstacle wasn't the motherboard, it was the plastic structure around the disk drive area. At that point, I didn't really have a choice. It had to go. The plastic there is fairly thin, so instead of using a cutting tool, I used a soldering iron to melt it away little by little. Then, oh no, I accidentally cracked the shell. For a moment, I thought I had just ruined the entire project. So I grabbed the soldering iron again and carefully melted the plastic around the crack, hoping I could fuse the pieces back together. After that, I sanded and trimmed the modified area to make the edges as clean and square as possible. Is it perfect? Not really. It's definitely not the most beautiful modification I've ever made, but it's strong, and considering how much cutting, melting, and abuse this shell has gone through, I'm honestly pretty happy with the result. The I/O ports and display outputs were still rubbing against the edge of the shell, so unfortunately more cutting was required, and it didn't stop there. The USB ports were sticking out just enough that I had to carve out another opening to make everything fit properly. Then, oops, I accidentally cut one side wider than I intended. That opening ended up looking pretty rough. Honestly, it's not my finest work. So if you're watching this video, I'm hoping you'll be kind enough to skip over that part. Anyway, after a few more adjustments, I was finally able to fit both halves of the shell back together properly. And I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say this. From the outside, it still looks almost exactly like a PS2 Slim, which is precisely what I wanted. Then, right when I thought I was done, I realized I'd forgotten something important: a power input. At some point, this thing actually needs electricity. Thankfully, fixing that was much simpler than everything else I'd been dealing with, and only took a few minutes. Unfortunately, I didn't have an M-SATA drive available, so I had to use a standard SATA SSD instead. Thankfully, there was still just enough space left inside the shell to squeeze it in. Next came the power button. The original PS2 power button was completely dead, so I had to fall back on a solution I've used many times before. A simple switch, nothing fancy, just reliable. I mounted it in an empty spot along the edge of the shell where it's easy to reach but doesn't stand out too much. And with that, the hardware side of the project was finally complete. A fully functional PC inside the shell of a PS2 Slim. To power the system, I needed an external power supply connected through the 6-pin PCIe power connector. Not exactly how Sony intended this console to be powered, but it gets the job done. Alright, this is the moment I've been waiting for the entire build. After all the cutting, modifying, and problem solving, will this thing actually turn on? Oh my god! No way. It actually powered on the very first time. I genuinely wasn't expecting that. After everything I had cut, melted, modified, and improvised, I was fully prepared for something to go wrong. But somehow it worked. For the operating system, I'm going with Linux Mint. The hardware inside simply isn't powerful enough to deliver a smooth experience with Windows. And speaking of hardware, this little machine is running an i3-2450M paired with just 2 GB of RAM. Not exactly a powerhouse by modern standards, which means my next goal is pretty obvious. I want this disguised PC to behave as much like a real PS2 as possible. So I started looking into PS2 emulation. Before long, I found plenty of tutorials showing how to set everything up. At that point, my job was simple: follow the instructions carefully and try not to break anything. Now, I know watching software installation isn't exactly the most exciting thing in the world. So let's skip ahead to the part where I actually get it working. After everything was set up, launching games turned out to be surprisingly simple. Just a couple of mouse clicks and I was ready to play. The first game I tested was GTA San Andreas, and unfortunately, the results weren't great. The frame rate hovered around 15 to 20 FPS most of the time. This game was absolutely exhausting the CPU. You can see it sitting at 100% usage almost the entire time, desperately trying to keep up. At this point, it was pretty clear that the hardware needed some help, so I decided to give this PS2 a small upgrade. I had an i5-3320M ready to go. It's still only a dual-core, 4-thread CPU, but it's roughly 28% faster than the i5 I was using before. More importantly, it comes with Intel HD 4000 graphics, instead of Intel HD 3000, and that's a fairly significant improvement for integrated graphics. While I was at it, I also upgraded the memory from 2 GB to 4 GB. Now let's jump back into the games and see whether those upgrades actually made a difference. Let's go back to GTA. The upgrade definitely helped. Frame rates are noticeably smoother now, gaining roughly 10 FPS compared to before. Most of the time the game sits between 20 and 25 FPS. That's still not particularly high, but it's a meaningful improvement over the original setup. Next up is Dragon Ball Z. Here the frame rate hovers around 20 FPS as well. And yes, by modern standards that sounds low. But it's worth remembering that many console games from that era were designed around frame rates like this. Back then, nobody was chasing 60 FPS. Now let's try something completely different, Minecraft. And this is where things get much more interesting. The frame rate jumps to around 60 to 70 FPS, making the game feel considerably smoother than the PS2 titles. But I wanted to see how far I could push it, so I lowered the render distance to the minimum and switched to windowed mode. And oh my god, the FPS shot past 140. Although to be fair, it wasn't perfectly stable. There were still moments where it dipped below 100 FPS. Even so, that's an impressive result for a machine hiding inside a broken PS2 Slim. There are still a couple of quirks with this machine though. The biggest one is cooling. If I close the PS2's disk drive lid completely, the cooling fan gets starved for airflow and starts making a pretty unpleasant noise. But the moment I flip the lid open, the noise disappears almost entirely. So my solution is simple. I'll leave the lid open while gaming to give the system room to breathe, then close it again when the machine is turned off. The other major drawback is audio, or more accurately, the lack of it. This motherboard was originally designed for industrial systems and crypto mining applications, where onboard sound isn't exactly a priority. As a result, there's no built-in audio output. So, despite looking like a game console, this thing is strangely silent. But aside from those compromises, I'd call this project a success. I managed to fit an entire PC inside the tiny shell of a PS2 Slim and get it up and running. And honestly, that's all I set out to do. If you enjoyed the build, don't forget to leave a like on the video. It really helps out the channel.